easy for me to say. The hour of convening has arrived, and the Senate will now come to order. This time I would ask that all unauthorized persons exit our beautiful chamber. The chair has run out of superlatives for recognition of the senator from the 53rd, so he's just going to refer to him as Chair recognizes his good friend, the chairman of the Rules Committee.
Indeed, Mr. President, it's good to be a friend of the leader of the state of Georgia and proud of all the work you're doing. Moment in time today. General Beauregard Lee, Georgia's groundhog, did not see a shadow, which means spring is coming early. I don't really believe that, but I'm not the groundhog, even though I've been called worse. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, sir. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 59 by Senators Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to elementary and secondary education so as to provide for additional QBE funding for each full-time equivalent student.
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 60 by Senators Thompson of the 14th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 5 of Chapter 9 of Title 45 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia State Indemnification Fund.
Public Safety.
Senate Bill 61 by Senators Anderson of the 43rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 8-3-201 of the OCGA, Article 1 of Chapter 1 of Title 20 of the OCGA, Chapter 1 of Title 34 of the OCGA, and Article 2 of Chapter 19 of Title 45 of the OCGA, relating to definitions relative to fair housing, general
Insurance
provision.
and Labor.
Senate Bill 62 by Senators Tippins of the 37th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA, relating to elections and primaries generally, so as to provide that the name and designation of the precinct appears on
Ethics.
Senate Bill 63 by Senators Brass of the 28th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 15 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to the Fair Business Practices Act of 1975.
Science and Technology.
Senate Bill 64 by Senators Anderson of the 43rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to holidays and observances so as to revise the holidays observed in Georgia to designate the Tuesday following the first
Government
Monday.
Oversight.
Senate Bill 65 by Senators Gooch of the 51st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to provide
Regulated Industries.
Senate Bill 66 by Senators Anavatarte of the 31st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to education and revenue and taxation.
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 67 by Senators Walker III of the 20th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 68 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 69 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to primaries and elections generally so as to provide that
Ethics.
persons. Senate Bill 70 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally so as to provide that a person who
Ethics.
votes. Senate Bill 71 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally so as to revise the definition of absentee elector.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 72 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally so as to provide that county registrars.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 73 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally so as to limit the disruption of absentee ballots.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 74 by Senators Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally so as to revise the ability of poll watchers at tabulating
Ethics.
centers. Senate Resolution 49 by Senators Butler of the 55th and others, a resolution urging the United States Representative for Georgia's 14th Congressional District, Marjorie Taylor Greene, to resign from the 117th
Rules.
Congress. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 20, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time? And the Secretary waves. Is that a thing? It's now time for a morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes his good friend, the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 35th, 38th, and 33rd. Scratch that last one. I'm sorry. That's it, sir.
Without objection, the senators from the 35th and 38th are excused. The chair recognizes the minority leader. Can you say it one more time? Your mic wasn't on.
Senator from the 10th.
Without objection, the senator from the 10th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 40th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 36th.
Without objection, the senator from the 36th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 10th.
Without objection, the senator from the 10th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll. The senators signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. Mr. Secretary, will you please, oh, wait a minute, we still got members coming in. For what purpose does the senator from the 42nd rise?
Is it too late to ask for a member to be excused?
It is, once we open up the machines.
Open it up. Okay, I wasn't sure.
Thank
if it was
you.
Open or close?
Have all senators voted their attendance? Going once, going twice. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. It's now time for a morning devotional, and I'd ask that all senators please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. And doorkeepers, please secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 16th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and also to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
And we do the pledge to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. State flag, I pledge allegiance to the Lord, to the principles for which it stands, liberty, justice, and moderation. Well, good morning. And I'm excited to have Pastor Billy Smith from Christ Chapel Church in Zebulon, Georgia. And if you don't know where Zebulon, Georgia, you need to go there. And if you want good barbecue there, there's also the Oink Joint, and I encourage you that you can visit there as well. But if you want spiritual food, I will tell you to go to Christ Chapel. It is a phenomenal church in a small town, but it's a nice, large church that's made an impact in the community. And when you see the new facilities they just put together, we went down there, about a year ago that they entered in. You drive through and you go, wow. And they have done a phenomenal job to ministering to the community in a way that is there. Billy does this. I don't know about you, but I get encouragements from him in cards coming back. And I don't know, every once in a while, we all need encouraging. I went down to his church, and that's what I saw, is people who were encouraged in the midst of all that's been going on. Phenomenal job. He has 4 children, and he did ask me if he could take up collection. I told him not allowed. We wouldn't let him do that. That was the only part we wouldn't let him do this morning. But if you will, I'm going to ask him to come forth and share God's word with us, and also pray for us at the end. Pastor Billy?
Good morning. Thanks, Senator Harbin, and for the invitation today. I just want to jump right in. I only get a few minutes, so I want to make the most of that. A few weeks ago, I was upstairs in my oldest son's bedroom, and I'd called his sister in because they had been fighting. And I said, we're going to talk about your attitudes. And I said, here's what I know about attitudes. They can make you or break you. They can heal you or hurt you. They can make you friends or enemies. They can make you happy or miserable, successful or failure, but I want your attitudes to change. And I felt really good about myself. I turned around and walked out. I went, that's a good dad moment. Until I got in the hallway and I realized my attitude hadn't been real good lately either. I think all of us here have to calibrate and check and change our attitudes often. As a matter of fact, there's a humorous story. There was a grandfather in his 80s who had laid down to take an afternoon nap and had some of his grandkids over. Maybe you've done that at your place. And while he was sleeping, the kids walked in and put some Limburger cheese on his mustache. When he woke up with a snort, he said, man, this bedroom stinks. And he stomped out of the bedroom and slammed the door into the hallway to the living room. And he said, man, this living room stinks. Slammed the door and walked on the porch and went, I want to get some fresh air, and exclaimed, the whole world stinks. And when our attitude begins to take a negative turn, it seems like everything around us does begin to stink a little bit. Several years ago, I was in a staff meeting at our organization, and I had a guy come in who was just absolutely killing every good idea of the day. And you've maybe been around people like that before. And I asked him, I said, man, what's wrong with you today? And he said, I got up on the wrong side of the bed. I said, I want you to do something for me. I'd like for you to get in your car and go home, undress, get back in your bed, roll over and get up on the right side of the bed, then come back to work and let's see if we can't get something done today. What I was simply saying is that your attitude needs to change if we're going to make progress today. God really has shown me 3 things after my conversation with my kids that I think are important for all of us, but it starts with me. He said, Billy, your attitude reveals the real you. Years ago, I was teaching some students, and I brought in a mason jar. I didn't tighten the lid completely, and it was full of water. I would shake the jar, and I would ask the class, I would say, now, why is the water coming out? And somebody would lift their hand, and one guy said, well, it's because you don't have the lid on good. I was like, well, that's true. That's accurate. Another young lady lifted her hand and said, no, it's because you're shaking it. If you would quit shaking it, the water would stop coming out. And a third guy said, no, it's just gravity. You know, when you shake it, it falls out. And I said, all those are right, but it's bigger than that. Water is coming out of the jar because water is in the jar. And attitude is a lot like a jack in a box. It explodes and comes out when we shake and we have hard times in our life. And I hate what my attitude looks like sometimes. I really do. It takes me by surprise. Proverbs teaches us this: for a man thinks in his heart, so he is. Attitude exposes our hearts. The second thing I felt like the Lord said to me was, Billy, your attitude determines the success and failures of all your relationships. Your marriage is better when you have a good attitude. You get to go home and sleep in the bed. You know, it's better. Your kids' relationship, your friendships are better. Your work environment is better. All of our relationships are strengthened or weakened by our attitudes. In the book of Numbers in the Old Testament, there's a guy there named Moses, Big Mo, maybe you've heard of him. He's the guy who got the 10 Commandments and brought them down to the people. And his sister and brother were jealous of him because of his leadership. God had appointed him. And Miriam and Aaron had a terrible attitude. And the attitude created division within the house of God. Attitudes matter. The third thing I felt like the Lord said was your attitude is always your choice. Think about that this morning. When you got up, you decided what kind of day you were going to have. You say, no, I had to encounter a wreck on the way here. I was in traffic. I got detoured. But that didn't decide your attitude. We decide that. I have a guy who works with me. He's sharp. He's put together good. He's just cool and calm and collective under pressure. He was asked one day by somebody who thought a lot of him and said, I bet you graduated in the top half of your class. He said, no. He said, but I'm proud that I'm part of the half that made the top half possible. He just took and made it positive. He said, look, I just partied in school. I'll just be honest with you. It was PJ, not pajamas, but pre-Jesus. You know, I just did those things. But our attitude is our choice. I've read the story of Dr. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Nazi concentration camp. They said when he got there, he said they took our clothes from us. They marched us around nude, trying to take our dignity away. They stole my watch that my grandfather gave me, he said. They took the ring that my wife slipped on my finger at our marriage ceremony. And they thought they had me. But the one thing they could not control was my attitude. And in the book, he says, I chose the attitude of joy, of hope, and of positivity. He's a Holocaust survivor. That's a big deal. Every day across the nation, 2 birds set out to find food. There's the vulture. You know what he's looking for? Something that's dead, something that's rank. And he finds it. And a hummingbird sets out every day as well. He's looking for something fresh from a plant that's starting to bloom, and he finds nectar. I hope today you find what you're looking for. And it starts with waking up every day saying, you know what? I'm going to make the day count. I'm going to make a difference. The change starts with me. I'm going to have the attitude and the heart of Christ. I want to pray for you today. Lord, all over this place are people who come from many different backgrounds. But certainly nobody would be offended if I prayed for you to bless them. So I do that today. I pray blessings over every man and woman in this room. I pray for their homes. I pray for their families. I pray for their businesses. I pray that you show favor on them. And I pray that today is productive in this room. And I pray those things in the wonderful name of Christ. Amen. Thank you for the opportunity today. God bless you.
Senate will now come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for the purpose of introducing the doctor of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm introducing the doctor of the day today on behalf of the senator from the 38th, who's not with us today. The doctor of the day is Kelly DeGraffenreid, MD, and she serves as the Physician Program Director of Access and the Patient Care Experience for Kaiser Permanente of Georgia. She's a specialist in adult medicine, and she believes that our bodies, minds, and relationships all have an effect on our health and encourages her patients to make time to celebrate their lives. Dr. DeGraffenreid is a native of Indiana, the youngest of 11 children, and she decided in 8th grade that she wanted to be a physician. She graduated from Purdue University with a pharmacy degree and then went on to get her MD at Case Western, did a residency at Emory, and she joined Kaiser in 2003 and sees patients actively throughout Metro Atlanta. She's also on the board of directors of her medical group, and outside the office, she plays the piano and sings at her church. And she's an avid tennis player and fan of professional football. So if you get a chance to go visit Dr. Graffenreid in the medical aid station today, I know she'd be glad to see you. And while I'm here, Mr. President, I also wanted to highlight a special day today. And you may have on, or you may have on your desk, a mask that honors Addiction Recovery Awareness Day, which is today. And there are meetings going on all day for this group. And as you know, addiction issues have increased during the pandemic. So this is a very important thing that we're highlighting today. We have a bipartisan, bicameral working group on addiction and recovery, of which I'm a member. And I know that recovery is a lifelong process, and I just want to salute those who are fighting this very difficult fight. Thank you. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the minority leader for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. I rise today on a point of personal privilege to recognize a moment in history. Fannie Lou Heyman was born in 1917 to sharecroppers in Montgomery County, Mississippi. Heyman was an American voting rights activist, women's rights activist, community organizer, and a leader of the civil rights movement. Her activism journey started in 1962 when she was denied the right to register to vote due to a literacy test and subsequently targeted by the Ku Klux Klan as a result. Though she faced many threats, Heyman was determined to vote and took the state literacy 2 more times until she passed. At these events, she became more involved in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and taught classes at many Southern Christian leadership conferences. In 1964, Heyman helped co-found the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party to ensure there was a party for all people that did not stand for any form of exploitation or discrimination. 8 years later, she was elected as a National Party delegate, leading her to travel around the country in an attempt to tell her story. She continued to work on other projects as she actively sought equality across all aspects of society, noting that freedom for all required action from all. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th. for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is my first time coming down to the well, so I'm excited to be here. Back home, many of you know I farm for a living. When we talk about going down to the well, it generally involves a water wagon. But at any rate, the message we heard today I thought was great, about finding the positive in everything. And we've all been through so much lately, through the last 9 months, 10 months. And I wanted to share some good economic news. In the first half of fiscal year 20, Georgia announced the creation of more than 16,000 jobs and nearly $6 million in new investment. And as someone who lives in rural South Georgia, over half of those jobs are going to communities outside of metro Atlanta. In terms of the budget, thanks to conservative fiscal management and our measured reopening, our rainy day fund remains intact. The governor's budget includes no new taxes to state agencies. While other states are looking at massive budget deficits, planning furloughs and layoffs of state employees, and are forced to look to a gridlock Washington, D.C. for a bailout, our budget includes no furloughs, no layoffs, fully funds K-12 education, and includes significant funds for rural broadband expansion and health care reform with no new taxes to pay for it. All the while, we've maintained our AAA bond rating. We've been the #1 state to do business for 8 years in a row, and our unemployment is consistently below the national average of 5.6%. Also, I'd like to talk on a personal matter, something that's important to me. I live in a little community down in South Georgia that we have to drive about 20 miles round trip to get a loaf of bread. And I want to take this opportunity. I brought this picture from home. This picture was taken outside of my farm in 1956. This is a state highway. A log truck and a car can't pass on a state highway in 1956. Some of our family and other members down there that were farmers were trying to take these pictures and bring to the legislature to, kind of let everybody know what the situation was on the ground as far as our road system. This hasn't been that long ago. When we look at rural broadband today, this picture kind of illustrates where a lot of people like my family, where we're at as far as the technological divide between Atlanta and the rural parts of Georgia. So I want to thank Governor Kemp, his administration, you all in this chamber, and the people of Georgia for the recent investment that we've decided to make in rural broadband. It is a tremendous issue for farmers, rural Georgians, and it has agriculture as our #1 industry in the state of Georgia. In order for it to continue to be successful, it's something that we've got to continue to invest in, and I thank you for making that investment in rural Georgia. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I come to the well to share some exciting news with you today. Yesterday, the Atlanta City Council passed overwhelmingly an ordinance to abandon Capitol Square Southwest, Mitchell Street, in between the Capitol and the LOB, transferring it to the state of Georgia. This will allow us to improve the physical security around the Capitol Square and the Capitol complex and make us be able to close Mitchell Street permanently. Finally, we closed it during session, but it'll permanently be closed. I want to thank my friend Councilman Michael Julian Bond and his colleagues Matt Westmoreland and Dustin Hillis for sponsoring this legislation and working hard to get it passed. The state has been working on this for over 4 years. It was part of Homeland Security's 36 recommendations. This was the final recommendation that needed to happen, and I'm pleased to announce that it has finally happened. I would be remiss if we didn't thank Governor Deal and Steve Stansel, and also Governor Kemp and Trey Kilpatrick for the last 4 years of their hard work getting this done. I'm also happy to announce that the state and city are going to be able to work together this year on the important project in our city. GDOT has agreed to improve a 3.5-mile stretch of Donald Lee Howell Parkway in northwest Atlanta, which is represented by our newest representative, the senator from the 39th, and I want to thank her for her hard work on this. This is a road that is dangerous. There's street racing going on, and we needed these improvements. It will decrease pedestrian deaths and improve safety on this street. I appreciate the City Council and GDOT working together to solve these two problems, and it serves that we can work together with the City of Atlanta and the state to make transportation better for our citizens. So with that, Mr. President, I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to offer a heartfelt thank you this morning for all the senators who have unfortunately tested positive to COVID this session. I thank the ones who have made it public so that those of us in this chamber and in the hallways can know so that we can take steps to protect our families. Last week, I was rather shocked to find out that the Senate is not doing contact tracing. Last week, 7 of us met for a meeting in a small room, fairly enclosed, for 30 minutes together. What we didn't know is one of us had tested positive. We didn't know because we hadn't gotten the results back yet. So the next day, the person who tested positive, he made sure that all of us knew. That was extremely important because then all of us could look at our own situations and make decisions to take precautions to protect the loved ones around us. I needed to do that for my mother-in-law. Now, my mother-in-law, she's probably a lot like a lot of your mothers or grandmothers. She absolutely loves her family. And you can see that in the huge dining room table that she has, where she likes all of us to gather around and eat biscuits and gravy, Brunswick stew, low country boil, pot roast. I think you get the picture. But she also has a lot of medical risk factors that put her in jeopardy should she catch COVID. And we've already had one death in our family, and that was somebody who was only 60 years old. So I choose to go there every weekend because my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they're lonely. She hasn't left the house hardly at all for almost a year. So each week, I'm extremely cautious about where I go and who I come in contact with. I have to be careful all the time to protect her. So I didn't go visit her last weekend because the senator who tested positive told me so that I could take those precautions. So all I want to do this morning is say thank you to those who've tested positive and have gone public. And I hope no one else tests positive. But if you do, I hope that you will let us know. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Today is Firefighter Day. Typically on this day, we would be flooded with firefighters from all over the state of Georgia in each and every one of our districts. We would have up behind me in the rostrum representatives from the Fire Chiefs Association, the Firefighters Association, the Fire Marshal, and all the other great groups that represent the fire service. Downstairs, we'd hear bagpipes playing. We'd have a literal army of folks here to talk about the needs and the accomplishments in the fire service and how we would continue to improve and do better. I'm blessed in my family to have 4 generations of us that served in the fire service and 5 generations of total public safety between police and EMS. We also are very blessed in this very chamber of having folks who have served in the fire service. Probably our most accomplished, the senator from the 53rd, former fire chief, leader, Rules Committee chairman, senator from the 51st, and I know a couple of others have helped out throughout their tenure. Some of us forget that we have over 30,000 firefighters in the state of Georgia. Close your eyes for a minute and you can picture the fire stations in each and every one of your districts. Whether they be a full-time, part-time, or volunteer, they're the ones that leave everything to come help you. I can tell you from personal experience that many of Thanksgiving dinners were eaten cold hours later. Middle of the nights of good sleep were disturbed in order to help someone else out. These men and women every single day are going to respond. And it's our chance today to simply say, thank you. This Senate led the way just a few years ago by passing the Firefighter Cancer Act. I have talked to some of those men and women who have been the direct benefactors, and I will tell you what, the difference it made to them and their family is more than any one of us could imagine. I want to thank the President of our body, the Lieutenant Governor, for his unending support of the fire service, as well as Governor Kemp. Together, supporting our public safety professionals is one of the most important things that each and every one of us can do. So I want to thank my fellow brothers and sisters in the fire service to know we'll have their back. I'm sure we'll hear from the senator from the 53rd and others who can share more important information about the fire service, our motto, and things of that nature. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
It's Firefighter Helmet Day, too. And yes, Mr. President, and thank you for the senator from the 56th, the chair of the public safety, and all of you for doing everything that we can to support the men and women who serve our state, our counties and cities, and the fire brigade, and also other first responders. It is amazing the things that they do to make us safe. I'm not going to be as detailed as a public safety chair. But in the old days, we put the wet stuff on the red stuff. Today, it is a high scientific effort. Training is remarkable, and our men and women who serve us know what to do. The safety aspect about driving to the scene and making sure everybody's safe is another trained effort that the men and women who serve us in the fire services do. I'm proud to be a former firefighter. I was much smaller back then. Today, I'd be a victim. They'd say, go in there and get Mullis. He needs some help. That was my brother, Mr. President. I didn't call my name. But today, we need to do everything we can to support our brethren and sisters in the fire service and also law enforcement and other first responders. They deserve it. They are unsung heroes. They do a great job. And thank you again for the chair of the public safety and his firefighter hat. This is a fire chief hat. It's white, and it has seen a lot of action, but my lieutenant helmet is melted upstairs if you ever come and see it, and not because of a burn barrel, but because of real activity. But, Mr. President, I love the fire service. I love the men and women who protect us, and we do have a motto, and also the motto will be given to you by the senator from the 51st District, and also hoseland techniques. He is a master and was an award winner for doing that when he was a firefighter. So go see him and get those techniques and demonstrations personally from him. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to first of all thank my colleagues from the 56th and the 53rd to recognize today as Firefighter Day. I did miss walking down the hallways and smelling the warm, comforting odor of chili cooking, that light snoring sound that follows all of our brothers and sisters in firefighting, or as we know them, hose draggers and stretcher fetchers. They're extremely important to the response of public safety. But all kidding aside, I want to talk to you about Investigator Gardner and Investigator Streeter two proud members of the Atlanta Police Department, who back in May were publicly tried, publicly crucified, and thrown out of the ranks of the Atlanta Police Department. And after many months of seeking and finally receiving due process, the Atlanta Civil Service Board came back yesterday and found that the city of Atlanta and the Atlanta Police Department had violated their own policies and their own rules in terminating these two gentlemen, these two law enforcement officers, these two strong members of the Thin Blue Line for doing their job. And while the path ahead of them is still heavy because of the irrational behavior of a once serving district attorney, we feel lifted up today knowing that the system we all stand up here and pledge to when we pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag that contains one of the virtues of justice applies to everybody in this state, even to those men and women that we ask to go out and do a job that many are afraid to do themselves. So congratulations to these two strong heroes for doing the job the way it should be done, and for their brothers and sisters who rallied around them when the city and the police department attempted to throw them away and discount their service. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 5th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here to say something that I'm really blessed. I'm blessed because all this going on, COVID and everything else, and I'm blessed to serve with you all. I'm blessed to say the word to my mother, who just turned 92 today. I want to say happy birthday to my mother. Thank you. I'm going to say something. Last night she beat me. I thought I was going to call her, and she called me in a video call. And she told me, at 92, she wakes up every morning, she walks. She's waiting for me to come see her. And I told her I'm going to come see her as soon as the COVID is over. Fun facts about my mother is she's 92. She can read newspaper without a glass. I can't. She got a little bit more hair than I do. So she also asked me if I need any money. I said, I can always use some, but I'm fine. Thank you, appreciate it. So I'm really been honored to serve with you all, and I wouldn't be here without my mother and her courage and her generosity. As I said, I'm really blessed. I lost my mother over 30 years ago, my father 30 years ago, but I'm blessed that she's around. And my grandmother lived to be 101, so I hope she can beat my grandma. With that, I yield the well, Mr. President. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take a moment and ask for prayers and a moment of silence for Sergeant Barry Henderson with the Polk County Sheriff's Department, who's on life support today, and for his family, his friends, and Polk County. So just ask for a moment of silence.
Senators ask for us to rise and offer a moment of silence.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in response to the slate of voter suppression bills that we just received yesterday, or they hit the news yesterday. Now, my grandmother struggled through the indignities of Jim Crow, too afraid to attempt to vote because she wasn't welcome at the voting booth. She was subjected to the counting of the number of jelly beans in the jar, intimidation by law enforcement, and looks of disgust by election officials. And sometimes she would tell us she felt her life was threatened. And she would say, all I wanted to do was vote. The Constitution says I can, but I wasn't able to. After the civil rights movement, she never missed an opportunity to vote, right up until the day she died at 96. Now we have the 2021 reboot of counting jelly beans. When I see the slate of vote-limiting attacks released yesterday, I think of elderly voters like my grandmother. I think of working moms and dads with limited time to spend balancing kids with schoolwork, getting their kids off to Little League, or just sitting down for a family meal. I think of our kids we sent away to college. I think of citizens struggling to this day to stay safe during the pandemic. I also see a desperate attempt by a party clinging to waning power, so out of touch and too lazy to pivot messaging to speak to a broader electorate, attaching themselves to a morally bankrupt president who traded in lies to overthrow our government and an administration rejected by Georgia voters. If we want great examples of an absentee process that works, let's look to states like Oregon. They're doing it very well, and it's been working for them for years. It is incumbent upon us as elected officials to educate our voters with facts, make available as many options as possible, and encourage full voter participation. To fight with honor means playing by fair rules. I yield the well.
You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. Chair would like to recognize the Majority Leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the announcements?
Rules Committee is canceled. Higher Education Committee is canceled. Insurance and Labor Committee will meet at 1 p.m. in Mezzanine 1. Health and Human Services Committee will meet at 2:15 in room 450. Public Safety Committee is canceled. Regulated Industries Committee will meet at 3:30 in room 450. And the Transportation Committee will meet at 4:45 in room 450. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Legislative Women's Caucus meets today. Come by room 216 of the Capitol to get a lunch in between the times of 11:30 and 12:10. The meeting is held by Zoom, and the topic is human trafficking, and we will have the Executive Director of Street Grace with us. Thank you.
Does any other senator have an announcement? The chair sees none. The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it, and the Senate will stand adjourned.